younger than 5 years old. Yesterday, government advisors endorsed smaller doses of Pfizer's vaccine for 5 to 11-year-old children. One advisor saying kids should have the same opportunity to be vaccinated as others.
Pastor Johnson is on the line.
Okay, Pastor Johnson, how are you?
We're going to learn about how.
Hold on one moment.
Andy, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm just trying to pull something down. Just give me a moment.
There are complications of other vaccines, like the rotavirus vaccine, and I do think that we are going to. I do think we should vote to approve it.
The FDA will decide within days. Then next week, the CDC will decide whether to recommend the shots and which youngsters should get them. Today, investigators will reveal what they've learned so far about the incident Alec Baldwin calls a tragic accident, the shooting on a movie set in New Mexico that killed a cinematographer. The AP's Oscar Wells-Gabriel.
The DA, Mary Carmack Outwise, tells the Associated Press that the probe is still in its early stages. That suggests we will not be hearing any bombshell news, such as
hearing your
whether
voice this
criminal
morning.
charges will be filed. She says the investigation
It's always good to hear yours.
are being made about filing charges, and that prosecutors will not act until the probe is complete. Meanwhile, she says those involved in the production are cooperating with law enforcement.
That big storm will push farther off the northeast coast today.
Last
says the
minute
Weather
we
Service.
find.
High winds and heavy rain tapering off through today. How to pay for President Biden's big social services and climate change plan. How about a new
nuggets
tax on billionaires and those with incomes of more than $100 million a year? That's the idea Senate Democrats are rolling out. The Braves over the Astros in Game 1 of the World Series, 6-2. This is AP News.
And so,
Google and Twitter are reporting their earnings in this pandemic period.
There are mixed results from quarterly earnings from Google and Twitter. Digital ad spending at Google drove its parent company, Alphabet's profit up 68%.
all right, Reverend.
Google is the world's dominant search engine. It
I
owns
am
the
good
biggest
here now.
and runs YouTube. According to eMarketer.
All right, so I can say hello to everybody. Hey, everybody, how you doing today?
$455 billion digital
Get
ad
this
market.
together.
Twitter posted a
How
net
you doing,
loss,
Reverend?
mainly because of a lawsuit settlement. But its revenue rose sharply in the third quarter, boosted by solid ad sales worldwide. Twitter says it has 211 million daily active users on average in the third quarter, up 13% from a year earlier. I'm Ed Donahue.
As retailers struggle with supply problems,
Reverend
one
Vicky?
toy store owner has this advice.
Dear.
How you
See something
doing?
you want? Buy it. Don't expect it to be
doing
there
great.
later. I'm
Good.
Ruth Foley,
And
AP
you
News.
are as busy as a beaver, huh?
Always, yep, before you get on the air, I'm pulling up headlines, I'm getting things organized. It's
We are Chicago's progressive talk.
It's
where
you
facts
know,
matter.
it's akin to you. Well, it's, of course, not as important, but it's akin to you getting ready for your sermon.
Sunday morning, that's
Yeah,
right.
it's like whew, I cannot do a whole lot of talking because I'm trying to figure a lot of other things out. And because I'm not in studio, there are things that I'm listening for, looking for, blah blah blah, all of that.
I understand.
Oh, I know you do. So,
Yes. You're looking at least a 5-minute delay there, and it's growing.
and
On the inbound,
moving the
trip time, O'Hare to
moving
downtown
things
is
around
17
here.
minutes. Outbound, it's 19.
Yeah.
Eisenhower clocks in
But
at
thank you so
26
much. I'm
minutes,
glad to see you. Let me say hello to Vanderlei
downtown.
down there in Brazil. Hey, sweetie,
25
Dave up there in
minutes.
Canada.
Four-wheel,
Andre here in
Southwest
Chicago.
Drive.
I don't know if you're in
14
Chicago,
minutes
Andre,
for
because you might be
That's
driving.
right.
I don't know.
Calamati.
Hey, Lester, Raphael, down there in Brazil. How you doing, sweetie? Linear Bob out in, he calls it Silicon Valley. Linda, Robert, Shirley, everybody, if you can, Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia, and Louis Chewy, and Lisa, please go over to the Santita Jackson Show channel on YouTube. We're trying to really populate that channel, and you all have been so generous as you've gone over there. So please continue to view us from there,
blood pressure,
as
anxiety
we have been
meds,
told,
everyone's on
as
them.
we have
If
been
you're
growing,
a 50-year-old male,
that
maybe a bit
that's what
porky,
we
and
need
you
to
may
do.
even have type 2 diabetes, $1
We need to
million
be
of term insurance may
over
only
there.
cost you about
So
$200
there's
bucks a
that.
month. Call Term Provider.
So
Speak
when you
with
get
Big
past
Lou at
100 people who are watching
Big
you,
Lou will find a term life
Pastor
policy for you,
Johnson,
even if you have type 2
send them over
diabetes,
to
overweight, or have high
to
blood pressure. Term providers help thousands of people
YouTube.
like you who think they
Create
can't
your
afford
YouTube
term
channel.
life
Okay.
insurance to buy $1 million
Okay.
of affordable
Because I
term
was
life for
told
you.
that
All you
Facebook
need to
really
do
is a
is call
portal for
Big
publicity.
30 seconds.
So you're not supposed to stay there. Thank you so much. You're not supposed to stay
Blue
there
will make sure the
for
scales are tipped in your
ever.
favor.
You're supposed
Call
to
800-590-7516.
do your thing and then
Big
point
Blue
people
will
to your
answer call
website,
and
which
work
mine
to
is
fit
under
you into a term
construction.
life
It'll be
policy
done
that you can
in about a
afford.
month.
Remember,
15.
like you, he's on meds
So
too.
everybody.
Call 800-590-7516. 800-590-7516.
Here we go.
Because 5 matter.
You are listening to WCPT 820.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is Wednesday, October 27th, 2021. Can you believe we're almost in the Christmas season? I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, my brothers and sisters to the north in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show on YouTube. We were told that we need to get everybody over to YouTube. So Joyce and Stanley and Curtis Kojo and Daryl and Veronica and Yolanda, I see you, Joyce and Andre and Vanderlei and Raphael and, oh my goodness, Dave Dowling, everybody, Renee, everybody, please, Linear Bob out there in Silicon Valley, Robert, Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia, Louis Chewy, Lisa, everybody, please go on over to the Santita Jackson Show channel on YouTube. And if you need to stick around on Facebook, we're not mad about that. Please go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page, but also go to WCPT 820's page. They stream all of our programming throughout the day. And go to WCPT820.com and AM950radio.com if you need to stream. It is great to be with you today. I want to hear your voices, 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. And let's talk today about the boosters and the shots for our children. Are we ready for these vaccines for our children? And is there a weight requirement for our children? I mean, there are a lot of questions that we're going to ask of Dr. Deborah Verholden and Dr. Shanita Knighton. And you all, of course, call in because you all are calling in and asking them all kinds of questions, and they will answer them for you. And then we're going to be talking about, of course, with legal Q&A with CK, about a couple of things. First, we're going to be talking about, I'm going to mix it up. Claudette Colvin. Who is she? She's a name that you should know. She actually was the 15-year-old who refused to move to the back of the bus about 9 months before Rosa Parks. Yeah, that's right. And her record is still on her record. She still has a record for that. More than 60 years later. So she is in court trying to get her record expunged. What do you think about that? And then we'll be talking about what happened on the set of the Alec Baldwin movie. A lot of people are talking about that. And it goes to workplace safety. This is about really kind of peeling back to find out what happened, who's liable. And we must always remember that a husband is without his wife and a son is without his mother. Just breaks your heart to think of what happened. And Alec Baldwin and everybody on that set are going to carry this forever. So let's talk about that. I mean, many of us deal with issues of workplace safety. Indeed, the crew, several members of the crew had left. They walked off the movie because they felt that it was not a safe environment. So there's a lot that we got to talk about, we've got to talk about today on the Santita Jackson Show. But there's so much going on, including, just really the push to get these budget bills through. So I want to know what your thoughts are about that. 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. We'll be taking your calls about those things that are on your mind on the Santita Jackson Show. So before we get the good news from Pastor Vicki Johnson, let's get to some of these headlines, everybody. In Chicago, it is nice and cool. Autumn is here. 55 degrees will be the high, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 55 degrees, has scattered showers. The Dow closed up 15 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed up 9 points. The S&P 500 closed up 8 points. A pretty steady day on Wall Street. The World Series, boy, what a night, what a night, what a night. Atlanta, who really didn't turn the corner and have a winning season until about August, the first week of August, well, they won last night over the Astros, who've been to the World Series like 3 times out of the past 5 years. Wow, Atlanta hasn't been there since 1999. So it was Atlanta 6, the Astros 2. We're going to see what's going to happen. They're going to have another game tonight, and then they're going to go to Atlanta. And I'm wondering if they're going to do all that tomahawk nonsense and all of that. Because if you notice, I don't call them by their proper name, which they have refused to change. I call them the Atlanta team, and I hope that they will change so that they will not insult the indigenous people. How about that? The Timberwolves will be playing the Bucks tonight in NBA basketball, and of course, in NHL, because it's the time of year we got a lot going on. You've got the Wild, who got 3 points over the Canucks 2. The Maple Leafs will be playing in Chicago, the Chicago Blackhawks, later on tonight. There are only 100 days, can you believe it, until the Winter Olympics in Beijing, but continuing COVID-19 outbreaks and growing boycott calls are putting a damper on preparations. What's going to happen, everybody? The FDA vaccine advisors voted yesterday to recommend emergency use authorization, not full approval, but emergency use authorization of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine in children 5 to 11. Members agreed the benefits of vaccinating younger kids appears to outweigh risks. And some were reassured by the fact that the dose for younger kids is much lower, 1/3 the amount than an adult dose. We're going to be asking Dr. Deborah Holden about that because we're beginning to hear much more about these vaccines. Indeed, the Moderna chairman says that a booster could be yearly. That's right. He indicated on Tuesday that his company's COVID-19 shot could require yearly boosters. He said, and I quote, "It may well need an annual booster, potentially varying on a year-to-year or every few years basis as the virus varies." What do you think about that, everybody? And the CD says that immunocompromised people can get a 4th COVID shot. That's right. The Centers for Disease Control said in an updated guidelines on Tuesday that some immunocompromised people who received either Pfizer or Moderna shots will be able to get a 4th shot. People over 18 who are moderately to severely immunocompromised and have received 3 doses of an mRNA vaccine may get a 4th shot of either the Pfizer, Moderna, or J&J vaccines. Well, that's how they're writing the story. I'm wondering how many do you need to get? You let me know. How many are you comfortable taking? That's what they're recommending. What do you think? 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Democrats are close to hammering out the language on their spending bill, which would allow it and the bipartisan infrastructure bill to move forward. President Biden has been clear that universal preschool and subsidized child care components need to stay, even as other priorities have been pared down. Paid family leave will also stay in the bill, though it has been stripped to 4 weeks from a proposed 12. What do you think about that, everybody? What do you think? Democrats are racing to reach this deal as Biden prepares to go on his foreign tour. He needs to go overseas with something in hand. Will he be able to do it? What do you think? The reconciliation framework is being said that it's not enough to push through infrastructure bill, according to progressives. They are saying we need you to up numbers on the human infrastructure, on the Build Back Better bill. Otherwise, we're not going to vote for the hard infrastructure. What do you think about that, everybody? It's a wild, wild world that we're living in, but they got to push. Because remember, Senators Manchin and Sinema are at the White House negotiating with the president. They have more power than the other 48 senators. How does that work, everybody? In the meantime, progressives are vowing to push very hard now to keep the agenda from being stripped and gutted beyond recognition. Indeed, the bottom line, says Bernie Sanders, the deal must include Medicare expansion and lower drug prices. He's not moving on that, everybody. What do you think about that? Businesses are now asking the White House to delay the COVID-19 vaccine mandates until after the holidays. Maybe they need to keep their workers out, everybody. And as we look at the Alec Baldwin case, which we'll be doing with C.K. Hoffler and independent film producer Bill Keys in the next hour. The Rust film set, Alec Baldwin's film, where you had this tragic killing of the cinematographer, the director of cinematography, Mrs. Hutchins. They say that criminal charges are on the table. Who might be criminally charged? Will it be the armorer? Will it be the prop master? Will it be Alec Baldwin? Will it be? We've got to talk about that, everybody. Because workplace safety is a real issue, Pastor Vicki Johnson. I mean, beyond the excitement of Hollywood and all of that, it is really about workplace safety. And God bless them, because it's just a tragedy all around. No one will ever, ever, ever forget what happened last Friday on that set. We've got Pastor Vicki Johnson, St. Thomas Lutheran Church here in Chicago on 80th and Jeffrey. Let me slow it down. Thank you, Pastor Johnson. 80th and Jeffrey from 11:45 to 12:15. You get a half hour of power with her every Sunday. So go to 80000 80th and Jeffrey. I'm trying to get it right, Pastor Johnson. I'm trying to get it right. They said you're going too fast, Santita. I said, okay. Yeah, I live to please. How you doing today?
I am doing great. Good morning, Santita. Good morning to your stars and to your friends. There is good news today. October is the month for everything. First of all, October is Oktoberfest because it is the month of my birth, along with the month of the birth of Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Happy birthday.
And both of us celebrate. Thank you. We both celebrate all month long. But October is also Breast Cancer Awareness Month. National Hispanic Heritage Month goes from September to October. Mental Health Awareness Month. National Economic Education Month. Adopt a Shelter Dog Month. Italian American Heritage Month. German American Heritage Month. Down Syndrome Awareness Month. Dyslexia Awareness Month. LGBT History Month. Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Antidepressant Death Awareness Month. Bat Appreciation Month. Caffeine Addiction Recovery Month. Celebrate the Bilingual Child Month. Church Library Month. Church Safety and Security Month. Eat Better and Eat Together Month. Emotional Wellness Month. Head Start Awareness Month. Health Literacy Month. Long-Term Care Planning Month, and many more. But October is also Pastor Appreciation Month. That's right, Pastor Appreciation Month. The work of a pastor is never done, so it seems. They share your joys and sorrows, your ups and your downs. They baptize the converted, visit the sick, bury the dead, marry those in love, and bless the babies. They celebrate the graduates and encourage the downtrodden. They counsel, and if they are wise, they know when it is beyond their reach and refer where you can get the help you need. Pastors led and yet lead social justice movements, fighting for the rights of the disenfranchised. They comfort the lonely and sit with the sorrowing. They push you to move up a little higher when you want to be stagnant. And they tell you that you can when you believe you can't. They teach, preach, reach, and pray. Yes, they are paid, but not nearly their worth. I would have to say that a good pastor is a true servant. So as this month of October comes to an end, if you know a pastor, please let them know that you appreciate them. You don't have to send them on a vacation although that would be nice. But just hearing the words, I appreciate you, will take them a long way. If you will do this, and I'm sure you will, then to me, that's good news.
Amen to that. You know, because our pastor, Reverend Clay Evans, he never retired, even though he retired
Right.
officially.
Right.
You know, every time you go to his house, we'd be sitting in the kitchen because we'd be lined up waiting to have prayer and to talk with him. He just never stopped. He never stopped.
Never stop.
But you know, just very quickly before we bring on Dr. Deborah Verholden, it seems that kind of pastoring is not what we really see anymore. You know, where the pastor goes in front of the church and shakes your hand. Um, uh, just what do you think? What has changed?
Well, the whole dynamics of the church have changed, where it is not just a spiritual bank, but it is a social movement as well. And it seems that people don't have the time to just stand and do those kinds of things, to really be hands-on, so literally, with people. But another thing that I would like to bring out is that pastors have a high suicide rate.
Yeah, and divorce.
And divorce rate. Families fall apart because of all that pastors give to congregations and to movements, and so that is why I really wanted to bring out the point that they need to be appreciated. We need to be appreciated during this month, not just this month, but whenever you can. Let your pastor know, or a pastor, because some do not have pastors, and some don't even believe the way that we believe. But still, you see the great work that is being done. So let's appreciate them.
Yeah, everybody, let us appreciate them. Let us appreciate them. And, you know, one day I'd love for you to come on and talk about, you know, the high suicide rate. Talk about the high divorce rate. People don't know that about pastors, that these people who help so much, it puts a lot of pressure on a marriage. It puts a lot of pressure on a family. It puts a lot of pressure, and many kill themselves. Many, if not most of their marriages do not survive. And most of us don't know that. You know, we do a lot of gossiping about pastors, but, you know, I mean, I've, on so many occasions, I might be talking to my father in public, and, you know, my father's on his way out of town, and this is like the couple of minutes that I've got. And to be fair, my mother trained us. She said, "You don't be needy. Your father gives you everything that you need. You have what you need." Um, but I remember in one particular time I was talking to my father, and I was going through a tough time, and my father wanted to talk to me, and he wanted me to ride to the airport, but I had some people with me, so I couldn't do it. So we're talking, and this woman literally walked in between us, and she said, "You get him all the time." Oh, that's happened more than once. And I said, "I understand." And I stepped away, and my father held my hand. He said, "You know, ma'am, just if you give me one moment, I need to talk to my baby for a minute." And she was not happy. He said, just give me one moment. I said, "No, Dad, let me step over here." And but that happened a lot, which is why also we didn't go out publicly. Like we, you know, after I think at a point he became so well known. You know, I think just starting when we were children, he said that's why we didn't go to the movies. It just became too
a circus.
Yeah.
It became a circus because people do not respect your private time. You are on call 24 hours a day, just like a doctor, but you still have private time, and that needs to be honored by those that you serve.
Yeah, it should be. It should be. But I think that people would be surprised to get the information that you've given us just now. And so I want us to I'd really like to come back. I'd like for you to come back one day, and we should talk about that, because, healers tend to be wounded, and
Yes.
that's why you heal. You want to heal people because you need healing yourself, and you know what it's like to hurt, and you know what it's like to bleed. But we don't really understand that about the high suicide rate, the high divorce rate. Most ministers' marriages don't make it. They don't.
Mhm.
So, it's something to think about, everybody. Pastor Vicki Johnson, everybody. Meet her where? Are we going to meet you at 11 o'clock, 11:45 on Sunday? Slowly.
11:45 on Sundays, 11:45 to 12:15, 8000 South Jeffrey Boulevard, Chicago, Illinois. And we're back indoors starting this past Sunday.
Physically
Mask,
distanced.
physically distanced, in and out.
Absolutely. Blessings to you, everybody. 80th and Jeffrey here in Chicago, a half hour of power with Pastor Vicki Johnson at the St. Thomas Lutheran Church at 80th and Jeffrey, 11:45 to 12:15. You don't want to miss it. Sending you much love, Pastor. And everybody, we've got Dr. Deborah Holden up with us today. We've got a lot to talk about. Got a lot of ground to cover. Dr. Deborah Holden, so much, but as we go to the break, dedicating the show to the great comic Mort Saul. Just found out that he made his transition. He was 94 years of age. He influenced Lenny Bruce and Richard Pryor and George Carlin. I mean, he was a master. And we thank God for all of the great work that he did down through the years. Mort Saul, wow. Some of these people, you lived with them forever, and you can't imagine the world without them, but his work will live on, not just his work, but Richard Pryor, influenced by him, George Carlin, influenced by him, Lenny Bruce, the greats, that let you know who he was. We've got a lot of questions for you, Dr. Deb, when we get back on the other side. We need to talk about the FDA panel recommending the Pfizer low dose COVID-19 vaccine. What do you think about that? And it's under emergency use authorization. Should that matter to parents? Is there a weight requirement? Like your child can't be in the front seat until they're like 70 pounds. What are some of the things that we need to be looking at when it comes to getting our children vaccinated? And then we're seeing that, wow, a recommendation that some of us get 4 vaccines. Yeah, I can't wait to talk to you about that because it's the Moderna chairman has said that the booster could be yearly and that could change from variant to variant, year to year. The CDC is saying that some immunocompromised people can get a 4th COVID shot. Whew. When we get back, we're going to talk with the brilliant epidemiologist, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University. She's at their School of Medicine, comes out of Johns Hopkins, Dr. Deborah Holden. We're going to bring on Dr. Shanina Knighton as well. 30. But first, we've got to talk to you, Dr. Holden, so we can find out what you think about all of this. And should your children get a vaccine that's under emergency use authorization? It's not been granted full approval. What does that mean? Dave Dowling wants to know, have there been some real long-term studies done on how the vaccines affect children? Back in just a minute on the Santita Jackson Show, 773-763-9278. Santita Jackson Show. Back in a minute. Stretching it out, Dr. Deb, because we were trying to get you today. But you have the number so you can call in, but that's the main number. But I'm going to send you another number as well, okay?
Yeah, no, he kept calling, but I couldn't hear him.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, I literally called somebody else to make sure my phone, I'm on the same phone. It wasn't working when he was calling me. I couldn't hear anything.
Okay. Well, you know what?
But I'm glad that you, I got the call. I don't have that number saved, so I'm going to.
Okay, you save that, and I'm going to send you the studio numbers as well. Okay. So you can just have them. Yeah. And that's how we're going to do that. So I'm sorry, I thought I had given them because as a regular, you should have them just in case. So now you have them, just so that you can have them. Okay.
Dr. Knighton's on the line.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Knighton, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. Got a lot of questions for you all today, and a lot of people have a lot of questions for you, so call us. That's 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. You all are asking some really interesting questions about these vaccines because, quite frankly, with vaccines, you typically think of them, as being a one and done deal. I've been vaccinated and there you go. But now we're finding out in real time, oh no, you need to get another shot this year. Oh, you might need to get another shot. Okay, a booster. Okay, now, oh, you can get a fourth shot. It's like, whoa. I mean, it begs the question, are they working? Do they need to be stronger? I mean, there's just a lot of questions that we have. And so we're going to talk about that. In addition to Dr. Deborah Holden, adult vaccines. That's something that you're bringing into our consciousness as well. Adult vaccines that most of us don't even think that we need to take vaccines as adults. You think that, you're done after you're a child. No. So she's going to be talking with us about that as well. So we got a lot to talk about with you today, Dr. Knight and Dr. Deborah Holden. You ready?
Yeah, I really want to talk about these incentives. I'm glad that people are catching wind of the incentives didn't work. And honestly, now they did a fair amount of this public health messages didn't work. The scared straight ain't working, which I think is important to talk about within what is working.
Okay.
That's that Wall Street Journal article.
Oh, yeah. The one that I sent you?
Straightforward.
Yeah. Well, I'll find some things for you now. Because I just think that, I think it's important for us to know, what is and is not working, right? But the incentives, whatever they're calling them, the lotto, it didn't work. Because people also have a lot of questions, right? They do. And, and they need to be answered. So, excuse me, I'm off mic here.
This is Jonah.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson. Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. Let's talk about COVID-19. A lot of people have a lot of questions, and we're going to be talking about the incentives that were put in place to try and get people to take the vaccines. They have not worked. That's coming from the Wall Street Journal. But we're also looking at these boosters. Well, let's start with the children, Dr. Deb, and then we're going to move to you, Dr. Knighton. What about we now know that our children between 5 and 11 can get vaccinated, can get these shots, but it's under emergency use authorization. Please explain that and what might be causes for concern for parents. Dr. Deb?
I'm sorry, say that again. I thought you said Dr. Knighton. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I know. I said, we'll move to Dr. Knighton, but of course, we're going to start with you, Dr. Deb. Now, Pfizer has said they can vaccinate 5 to 11-year-olds. And it's under emergency use authorization. Should we be concerned about that? What does this mean, for our children to get these shots under emergency use authorization? What does it mean for them to get the shots? Do they really, really need them? Because there's been speculation, not just, I mean, I'm not politicizing it. There's been speculation that our children don't need to be vaccinated, that maybe their own immune systems need to build up so that it can fight COVID-19. You explained it all to us.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question because I have a lot of friends with 5 to 11-year-olds who have been waiting. I think what we're going to see is very similar to what we see in adult vaccination. Most parents have already made up their minds whether or not they're going to vaccinate their 5 to 11-year-olds. Most parents already know that. They weren't waiting for the FDA, EUA, emergency use authorization. They weren't waiting for extra data. They've already, in my experience, most parents have already made their minds up about that. For a few people who might be on the fence, the approval, the emergency use authorization, or full-blown approval might tip the scales for them. But I think for most people, they've already made up their mind. And this is really interesting because in my experience, most people have a strong opinion. They're either a clear yes or they're a clear no. So I think what this will do is it will open it up, and what we'll see is this. We'll see a big boom in vaccinations in that age group, and then it'll wane off, and it'll trickle down almost to a halt. And we won't see an increase in those rates in the absence of some kind of mandate or something like that. But I do think most people have already made their mind up about whether or not they're vaccinating their children.
How does that play out in school? I mean, will parents start pulling their children from school? I was reading an article yesterday where some parents are being charged with being negligent because they're refusing to have their children vaccinated. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think we're going to probably see a lot more of these kinds of things being contested. I don't think it's a trivial thing to, with this vaccine in particular, because let's be clear, vaccinating our children is just standard. That's like standard procedure. You want your kid to go to school, they have to be vaccinated. Exceptions are very rare. They do exist, but they're very rare. So it's not that parents are not used to vaccinating their children, but people just have so many questions and so many doubts and reservations about this vaccine because legitimately of all the things that have happened and all the things that have been said. So I think we'll see eventually, I don't think it's going to be any time like in the immediate future where the COVID vaccine gets added to the standard list of vaccinations that children are going to have in order to be enrolled in school. And people who work in hospitals the same way they got to get that flu vaccine are going to have to get the COVID vaccine. That's what's on the horizon. How far out on the horizon it is, that remains to be seen. But right now, I don't think, I just think because we are still in the midst of the pandemic, this did all go very, very fast for people. We've had heard and had so much, sensationalized stories of these adverse events, especially in children. I just think that there are a lot of parents who have had no problems giving their children every other vaccine, but are going to be holding off on this one.
Well, but I think it's also, we've got, the Nordic countries, which, they are very, very slow on vaccines, quite frankly. The Nordic countries, Iceland, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, they have pushed back on Moderna. They haven't stopped them, but they've paused them. Should that be something that we should be looking at? And they've paused them for people 30 and under.
Yeah, well, they issued, I thought it was that they had issued a recommendation that men 30 and under use Pfizer and not Moderna.
Well, actually, this is it. Iceland is joining its Nordic peers in halting inoculations with Moderna on concern over their side effects. And then Sweden, Denmark, and Finland suspended the jabs for younger people because of the risk of heart inflammation, myocarditis, and such. Norway said men under 30 should consider choosing the Pfizer and BioNTech rival vaccine. But that's something that we don't talk about in the United States. But, these parents, they're getting online, like I do, and they're reading, news from around the world. And I think, that's important to do. So should that be a consideration for parents, or Where should we stand on this, Dr. Deb?
No, I guess, that's really going to have to be up to individual people, because if you look at what's happening, globally, and how medications are approved and how decisions get made, you have to ask yourself, do you trust more in those countries' governments than our own? So it's a valid question that people have to ask. I don't think I can answer that for people, but it's something that people may have to consider. People are just going to have to grapple with that. It's interesting because I told you, I said, man, I'm sort of, in hindsight and given how everything went, I'm sort of happy personally that I got Pfizer vaccine. I've been following Dr. Santita Corbett, and if you look on her Twitter page, what you'll see is she's laid out, this was, I think, her tweet from yesterday. She had laid out what her vaccine schedule is for like her and her grandmother and her fiance. So she tells you she got the first two, I think, of Moderna. She's getting which would make sense, right? She was the, part of the team that developed the technology for the Moderna vaccine. She's getting the Pfizer booster. I think her grandma got is getting the Pfizer vaccine and getting the Moderna booster. She just sort of laid it out, and then a whole bunch of other scientists and doctors chimed in and put their same, protocol up, what they got for their initial dose or doses and what their plans are, what they've gotten for their booster. And I think it's really interesting because these are some of our nation's leading scientists. These aren't people who are, and she's, amassed a fair amount of fame and popularity, which, is well-deserved. I think she's just absolutely wonderful. But these aren't people who are, making big-time money. Most of the scientists are in some kind of academic setting. And, it doesn't matter. You even can get a patent that comes out of your university, and most of the revenue from that goes to the university. We have set salaries, and I can bring in a $10 million grant or a $10,000 grant, and my salary remains the same. So these are people who don't have the same dog in the fight as, big pharma. Of course, Pfizer, Moderna, they're going to say their vaccines are the best and all of that. But these are the people who are actually doing the work in the lab. And that does mean something to me. It means something to me to know that, these folks, my peers, are also standing behind these vaccines. It means something. But, there's no magic answer here. People are going to have to grapple.
Yeah. I mean, because, weight requirements and, does weight matter? And what about, before I go to Dr. Knighton, really, I promise you, I'm coming right to you, Dr. Knighton. What about, they said that they're gonna get a smaller dose. Is this a smaller dose of what adults get? How is this going to work, Dr. Deb? Dr. Verholden? Oh.
It just keeps sounding like to me you're saying Dr. Knighton.
No. I keep saying I'm going to go to her, I promise. But I wanted to ask you this first. Are they getting? They're getting a smaller dose. Does it matter that they're getting a smaller dose? Are they getting a smaller dose of the adult vaccine, or what are they getting? What are the kids getting?
They're getting a lower dose of the adult vaccine. And I know people got all these questions, right? Because, you might have an 11-year-old that's, my size. I won't put my weight out there, but I'll say I'm 5'3".
She's have an 11-year-old.
Who's my size. But yes, if you're 5 to 11, there's a set dose for you. I'm assuming physicians will be able to have some leeway and some flexibility in that. But yes, there is. It's the same vaccine, just at a lower dose. Same way, if you were to give your, child or aspirin, you read on the back, there's a recommended dosage based on age. And that is sort of a bit of a crude measure, but there are some things linked to development And a more nuanced approach would include other things like height and weight and other things. But that becomes very hard to then create, very clear recommendations for people. So, this is our sort of standard approach. We go with age. So that implies a few things, and we'll cover many aspects of the height, weight, development, all of that stuff. If there was one sort of metric for that, it would likely be age. In the cases where it really is about dosage per, amount of body weight, in those examples, I think we do typically rely more on things like weight. But yes, for this, it is age-based.
Well, and of course, we're going to have more questions going forward, but I said, now I'm moving to Dr. Knight and Dr. Deborah Furrow. We do have so many questions. I mean, the fact is these vaccines are being given under emergency use authorization. You can't put a child under 70 pounds in the front seat of a car. Dr. Deb has explained to us, how they're apportioning these vaccines. What are you hearing from people? As a registered nurse, you are literally on the front lines of caring for people. What are you hearing from parents? What are you hearing from people about the vaccination of children?
So I am not on the front lines full time anymore. So I want to be clear about that. Like, my full time role is not on the floor as a clinician. But I have students that I do clinicals with. So I take inside of clinical settings, and I also have colleagues that still remain in clinical settings. And it's crazy. There's mixed messaging. I unfortunately am hearing from some people that they are regretful that they took the vaccine, but I'm hearing from others that they are okay that they've taken the vaccine. That they're happy that they took it because they do have other chronic conditions. Some of my colleagues feel like, hey, I've already had COVID 3 or 4 times. I'm not going to take it. So I think that there are a lot of mixed messaging out here. And just as Dr. Deb said, it's really come down to it being an individual decision of people. And many do have to realize that this, like, somebody can be that 1 out of 1 million, or they can be that 1 out of 100,000, right? It has that vaccine injury. And if that's going to affect somebody's family, that's going to make them question the next time something is available. So we have to realize that people's experience with medication, their experiences already with vaccines, is already going to build up that wall against whether or not they want this one. And as she mentioned, their mind has already been made up about whether or not they're going to take it. And so I just want to kind of put that out there. The other piece of it is this. There has been studies when it even comes down to the mixing of them that are animal studies. And, people want to see the people studies before they become the people. Does that make sense? Meaning, like, they want to actually see this done. It's almost like you go first and you jump off the bridge, and if it's safe, I'm gonna jump too. And this is like how things go. Like, this is actually how they say the adoption of technology. The Rogers theory is, where literally you're going to have the early adopters, you're going to have, the laggards, or, you're going to have the latecomers, you're going to have, like, the majority of the people that are going to be in the middle. Like, this is typical in regards to adoption. I think the problem is that now it's not helping when you have incentives pushing people towards it, when you have mandates that are pushing people towards it. Because if you have people that were on the fence before, it's just going to make them even more resistant now. And the best way to alleviate all of that is education. So what I've been struggling with, and I'm sure Dr. Deb has too, has been, how do you go up against these bad strategies? There's been so many bad strategies out here that it's like I'm always waiting on the ball to drop. So I'm out educating in the community, hosting webinars, giving people information, and they're like, well, such and such said in the news. And so then it makes you have to be creative again to try to explain the same message over and over, because people are going to believe what they want to believe if that message is put out there. And so I think the problem is there isn't more of a cohesive measure. I don't think that our leadership is talking to the right people when making these decisions. Even in my very own state where they decided, oh, well, let's give, $1 million away for the next 5 weeks. I'm like, y'all realize how much hand sanitizer, gloves, not really gloves, that's a joke, masks, that really could have been purchased. To help people. Do you realize how many educational signs and posters and reminder systems when people are going inside of settings to be used? So it's like so much more meaningful things that we could have been doing right now, instead of putting our money toward, hey, get vaccinated and we're going to give you resources you should already have. It's people out here that's hungry. It don't send the right message. To me, it's coercion. And that right there is unethical in science, and it goes against anything I've ever learned. Like, we're never supposed to convince somebody to take something. And that's the truth. And I get it. We're in a pandemic. But if the world is open back up and everybody, quote unquote, is getting back to normal, and we still got breakthroughs and people still got to wear masks and people still got to practice hand hygiene, it's like, are we really in a crisis right now? Because I understand the world has to go on, but this is where I say science starts to mix with political science. Because now, things can open up. Like, I saw the post about, oh, yeah, people want Biden to delay till after the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if it's that urgent.
Wait a minute. On health, yeah. Why do you want to? Because these people are quitting these jobs. That's why. Gee, it's not funny, everybody. But I'm just trying to figure out continuing to boost, Dr. Knighton and Dr. Deb, boosting these shots. I'm like, well, wait a minute. How long are they lasting? Because it makes me question, how strong are they? Do they need to be stronger? I mean, do they need to be tweaked?
Something, because I'm telling you, I only take a tetanus once every 10 years.
Well, and you know what? And when I have a headache, which is rare, but if I have an ache, I can't take 20 a leave. They tell you take one, you take 2 of these things at one. And if you do something, and you know what? It shows up. It'll show up on your liver. If you take some of these medicines too much. Okay.
We at the flu, now the flu vaccine is, an annual vaccine, because we know that it wears off over time, and it wears off after about 7 months. And I tell people that too, because I want them to look at this compared to this. I hate the word breakthrough. I don't like the word booster. Not when we're talking about a respiratory illness or infectious respiratory disease. It just needed to be from the beginning, the messaging. It'll be an annual, guys. This could potentially be an annual, because the Hong Kong flu, which was around in the 60s, ain't leaving until 2017 in terms of not being traceable. So we just know that COVID is going to be around for some time now, and you may have to take an annual shot of COVID vaccine, just like you do for the flu vaccine. That kind of messaging would have gone a lot farther, instead of saying, oh, y'all, we got to boost y'all because it don't work. Oh, y'all, don't mix the vaccines because it can be lethal and deadly. Then, go ahead and make a cocktail. This has been my problem from the beginning. It is crappy right now. I am very disappointed when it comes to the communication measures, because they so mixed up and so raggedy. It's like, all right, is it being done on purpose? Because you cannot have these intelligent people, okay, that are in communication, that cannot communicate with scientists in an efficient manner, as well as with epidemiologists, with infection preventionists, to make sure that the right messages are being shared. But instead, it's like, oh, say this. Oh, no, go back and say that. Oh, change this. Oh, do this. And it's no disrespect to individuals in a leadership role. But again, Fauci is infectious disease specialist, and even, too, like the director of the CDC, Dr. Walensky, again, infectious disease physician. They're not infection preventionists or individuals that specialize on prevention.
Oh, wait. Because, Because I would think, excuse me, Dr. Deb, that we would be trying to prevent the spread of infection. And you know what? I want you to weigh in on Americans. You said this was not going to work, Dr. Deb. You said paying Americans to get a vaccine does not work. Now the study, we'll talk about it some more tomorrow, but these last 3 minutes belong to you. You have been proved right. Hello, Dr. Deb.
Well, the thing I've been saying, and it's really funny, I'm glad that Dr. Dyken already called out Ohio because they were the first state that I know of that went big. They offered that $1 million lottery.
Wait a minute, and college.
And bless my governor's heart. Yeah, and scholarship. And my governor then said, whatever Ohio can do, we can do bigger. And I said, wait, what? I'm on the Michigan tax court. And I saw that press release. And I saw her say that. I started emailing the lieutenant. I said, don't. We want to do it better. We don't need to go bigger. It didn't work. It didn't work. You don't take something that didn't work and go bigger. And so Michigan did. They went bigger. They raffled off $1 million like a couple times. And then they had a daily $50,000 raffle daily for newly vaccinated people, plus a weekly scholarship. So they did what Ohio did, and then they took it up even further. And if you look at the slope, right? So remember, go back to your old school math. That's the change in rise over change in run. That's the line, right? It shows you the relationship between two variables. That there was an existing slope for daily vaccination rates. And then the lottery happened, and the slope didn't change even one drop. It didn't. As a matter of fact, it was already starting to level off, so it continued to kind of, go down the other direction, right? Instead of it being a sharper curve, it started to, tilt down, and it stayed on that tilt down trajectory. It didn't make a difference at all. Not only that, so many people didn't even know about the lottery that people were getting vaccinated, not signing up. They were getting vaccinated, not signing up, and then the chances of winning that $50,000 on one day, it was only like 800 people, I think, who had gotten vaccinated, which was like a record low number, and then only like 20% of them signed up. So you had like some ridiculously high chance of winning $50,000 that day. I mean, it was just
1 minute.
God, what could we have done with the millions of dollars that we dumped that into? So the thing about it is this issue around like Dr. Walensky, an infection doctor, and why is she, sort of making these recommendations? Why doesn't she have an infection prevention at the table? Mm-hmm. There's something called the Dunning-Kruger Effect. It's a phenomenon that was born out of psychology by two psychologists, last name Dunning and Kruger.
Okay, I got 20 seconds.
And they said, and they said there's a point at which you get just enough information to almost be dangerous to yourself. You get enough information that your confidence in your capabilities goes up, but you actually really are dangerous because
15.
you don't know enough to really be impactful. And that's what we're having happening.
Well, I don't know why prevention is not on the table, Dr. Deb.
They can know it all.
But Dr. Deb, I don't know why prevention in a plague, in a pandemic, when you're trying to prevent infection, why don't you have someone who can prevent infection at the table? I don't get it.
I really wonder how many of them even know about this specialty.
Well, they should. They should. Stay right here, everybody. We're going to be talking about Alec Baldwin at the top of the hour, and Claudette Colvin. She was a woman who, she was a girl, 15 years old, who refused to move to the back of the bus 9 months before Rosa Parks. She still has a record, everybody. Back with more in just a minute. Okay, ladies, I got about a minute for you, but I'm going to have to let y'all go. Paula, I just want you to know, I don't want you to feel bad about asking Dad for a picture when you were at Tavern on Rush. Please don't feel bad about that at all. And I certainly, for anyone who has asked Reverend for an autograph or for a picture, he loves to do it. So don't worry about that. And I don't mind. I just needed that 1 minute with him. We were finishing up a point. We were literally finishing up a point. He had finished speaking. He pointed to me from the stage, and he wanted me to come with him and he wanted to say something. And we were literally in a corner. So please don't worry about that. And you know, the way we were raised, if you go out, you belong to people, and that's it. Otherwise, we stay home. That's all it means. So you know.
Jealous of that picture.
What you say?
I said my husband got a picture with Reverend Jackson.
He is going. If you ask him, he will take that picture. He's going to do that. And so, and that's fine. That's not something that we mind at all. We don't mind it at all. But we are going to speak to the fact that the suicide rate in the pastoral community is very high, and that the divorce rate, most of their marriages do not survive. And most people don't know that. Most people don't know that the toll of pastoring, and that it takes on the pastor and their spouses and their families. Takes a heavy toll. But sending you much love, Paula, and enjoy that photo. Hey, Miss Wanda, sending you much love. Ladies, do you all want to say anything? I'm gonna need these 2 lines. Hello?
You know what? I just want to emphasize just really quick, and it goes back to what Dr. Deb was mentioning. And I'm going to put this article out because, and it's going to be on the topic of how Team Science could have had us better prepare or could be preparing us through the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And so just for the audience, Team Science is a collaborative effort that helps us to address a scientific challenge. And it leverages the strengths and expertise of like professionals that's trained like in different fields. And
we have Attorney Hoffler.
That perspective from all of these different fields to be able to come up with the best decisions. And even though we have all of this money, okay, in the United States, and all of these models that are moving towards an interprofessional education approach and Team Science when it comes down to our research funding, it is very perplexing to me that we are not taking that approach in real life. And I think that is the disheartening part when this is a lot of the requirements for some of the grants that we have to apply to.
It just seems it's so uneven. It's crazy. It really, really is. And Eddie Royal wants to know.
We have a bias too towards medical doctors. We have a bias towards medical doctors. We just think.
And we have Mr. Keys.
Be all and knowing how to treat the one person in front of you is very different than knowing how to protect an entire community, which is what I do. I focus on health at the level of population and community. Very different what Dr. Knighton does, which is understanding how to prevent the spread of infection, person to person and within settings. And so it's just like, but if you overvalue or you have a higher value on one specialty or another, that also boosts their confidence to think that they are the end-all, be-all as well. And it breeds a certain amount of arrogance and ignorance about the importance of Team Science and having multidisciplinary teams of experts. And that's what we've done. We dropped the ball. Literally, most of the messaging even. We have experts who do nothing. Their whole career is about how to message things around health that will both inform and educate people and also promote action and behavioral change. Health behavior experts, health communication experts were not engaged in this at all. The notion that people could spend their whole career doing this work, producing a body of evidence, developing standard practices and evidence-based practices, but some 2-star general will come up with the name for the push for the vaccine development without consulting even a master's level person. It just speaks to the fact that we are operating in the era of the unqualified. And I think our former administration really exemplified that because they put people in all kinds of high places that had zero qualifications for the post that they were assigned to.
But but Bush did it. They've been doing that for decades. You remember Heck of a Job Brownie? He was in charge of New Orleans, during Katrina. Like, heck of a job, Brownie. What? This is what they do. I mean, look, we saw last year, Dr. Fauci was standing there with no mask on. I mean, God bless him. He's done some great work in the past, but this was like, no. Come on. So, I think that there's a lot that we need. I'm going to have to let you all go because I'm about to come back up. But, whoa, we've got a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack because we keep getting these shots.
And I would add to that, the fact that the antibiotic resistant crisis that no one is talking about. I mean, being honest, which is something that's been looming for years and it's only imminent as far as to how we're doing things right now, and the fact that the public is not educated on antibiotic stewardship.
Which makes me wonder about even with these boosters. I'm like, okay, the more you take them, will they work better?
1 minute.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to let you all go because I need to move on to the next topic. But I can talk to you all for a couple hours and everybody can hear you too. So sending you much love.
Yes, have a great show.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Shanina. Bill and CK.
Good morning,
everyone.
Okay, great. Make sure you're not on speaker, everybody. We're coming up, and make sure everything is turned off in the background. Thank you. I'm glad to have you all here today. Hallelujah. Thank you.
good to be here.
Wonderful. I know you weren't. You were surprised when you got.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I knew he was shocked when he got that text from me last night. Like, huh? What? Well, I was going to call you about this. Are you kidding me? About Alec Baldwin and what's going on with that workplace safety. There's so many issues here, but most of us never get to a movie set, and this is what you do. So stand by.
It's
tragic.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I'm Santita Jackson. It's 6 minutes after the hour. It's a joy to be with you. On Wednesday, October 27th, 2021, I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. Let's talk about the Alec Baldwin case. Wow, what a tragedy, what a tragedy. And it continues to unfold every day. I think it calls into mind a lot of questions about workplace safety, and just got to talk about that. I'm going to talk about that with a real shown-up filmmaker who can help us to understand how these sets work. Indeed, he has worked on sets where they've had guns, so can't wait to talk with him as we are delving into legal Q&A with CK. That's right, it's Wednesday. You know what time it is. It's time for legal Q&A with CK. Everybody call us at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. We're streaming on WCPT820.com, AM950radio.com. And I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please get on over there. We want to continue to populate it. Thank you so much for joining the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. And of course, we're streaming on the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page, as well as the WCPT 820 Facebook page. Let's get some of these headlines out of the way so we can get to our show. Chicago will have a high of 55 degrees, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 55 degrees. Scattered showers. The Dow closed up 15 points yesterday. The S&P closed up 8 points. The NASDAQ closed up 9. Well, the World Series got off to a roaring start last night. And Atlanta team, who have not seen a World Series, they've not been in one since 1999. They came out the gate swinging 6-2 over the Astros, who made 3 appearances in the World Series in the past 5 years. Wow. So, of course, we'll have game 2 tonight, and then they move on to Atlanta for the next 3 games. The Timberwolves will be playing the Bucks tonight, and in hockey, the Maple Leafs will be playing here in Chicago, and the Wild, well, they were triumphant over the Canucks, 3-2. Everybody, what about COVID? Everybody is wondering what is going on with COVID. The FDA panel recommended that Pfizer be able to administer their low-dose COVID-19 vaccines for children, 2 children, 5 to 11. And it's an emergency use authorization, but they will be able to be vaccinated very, very soon. Members agreed that the benefits of vaccinating younger children appear to outweigh risks, and some were reassured by the fact that the dose for younger kids is much lower, 1/3 the amount, than those given to adults. Now the FDA itself must decide whether to authorize it before the question goes to the CDC advisors next week. And finally, the CDC director. So it's not been authorized yet. It's not been fully approved, but they do have emergency use authorization. What do you think about that, everybody? What do you think? Call me at 773-763-9278. Of course, we've been talking about that. And then we found out that Moderna says that the booster could be a yearly shot. And the CDC says that some people who are immunocompromised can get a fourth COVID shot. Wow, everybody. Democrats are close to hammering out the language in their spending bill, which would allow it and the bipartisan infrastructure bill to move forward. President Biden, who is on his way overseas, wants to have something in hand before he leaves for his overseas trip. And he's been clear that universal preschool and subsidized child care components need to stay, even as other priorities have been pared down, like 2 years of free community college. We're going to continue to watch that, everybody, as Democrats are racing to reach the deal. Indeed, Senators Manchin and Sinema have been meeting at the White House with President Biden. Progressives are pushing, and they're saying, we cannot have you gut the bill and make it unrecognizable. Indeed, Bernie Sanders is saying the bottom line is that the deal must include Medicare expansion and lower drug prices, and he is not moving on that. Business groups are asking the White House to delay the Biden COVID vaccine mandate until after the holidays. Guess they got to keep those workers. Everybody, call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. What do you think about what happened on the set of Rust? That's Alec Baldwin's latest movie. Of course, he's a producer on it. He's a lead actor in it. And it's a tragedy. It's just a tragedy. He was rehearsing for a scene and shot the gun and killed the director of cinematography, Helena Hutchins, and shot the director. And so what has happened? She died. Of course, she was married with a son. Now her son is without his mother, and her husband is without his wife. It's a tragedy all the way around. A tragedy all the way around. How did it happen? How did it happen? What do you think happened? Well, that's why we're bringing this to Legal Q&A with CK right here on the Santita Jackson Show, because we've got a lot to talk about. And CK, we've got someone who we have both known. I've known him for 1,000 years. I can't say how many, because now every year it gets to be a little bit more like, wow, have I known you that long? Bill Keys, CK, used to play football at UVA. He was drafted to play professional football. He's written for the Washington Post. They wanted to put him on TV, and he worked for Reverend. And then he started working for Spike Lee and really worked his way up in the film industry, became one of 2 African Americans to have purchasing power at a major Hollywood studio. So he's become an executive, and he is an independent producer. And he started out as a PA, as a production assistant, and worked his way up to being an assistant director, overseeing the handling of scenes involving firearms. CK, when you heard about this story before you bring on Bill Keys, wow. I mean, and now they're saying that, hey, some people could be criminally charged, certainly civilly charged. What is the difference between a criminal and a civil charge? Because they're saying, well, we're looking at possible criminal charges, certainly possible civil charges. What does that mean?
Absolutely, Santita. Good morning, Santita. Good morning, Bill. Good morning to our wonderful audience. But this is a tragedy beyond tragedy. A civil case is a case that an individual who has been wronged can bring. In other words, if you have been in a car accident, let me just go as basic as that. If you've been in a car accident, what is your remedy? If someone rear ends you, they're clearly at fault, you can bring a civil case, you as an individual. If you have been a victim of discrimination in the workplace and you want to sue your employer, you can bring a civil case. If you've been a victim of medical negligence, you can bring a civil case against the doctors. That's a civil case, or different types of abuse in workplace abuse. However, if there are criminal elements, such as police shootings, such as the shootings in this case, someone can be criminally charged where there's a crime that's committed. Now, there's always the ability to bring a civil case when there's a criminal case. Let's take the George Floyd murder. there was a civil case brought against the police department that was settled, and other entities. But the criminal case is what the state or the federal prosecutors bring. And you, more than likely, if you are a victim or your family member is a victim, might be a witness in that case. But it is the state bringing the case in name of the victim. So that's a criminal case. So that's the distinction. So one, you have the state bringing it, the other, the individual. But remember, even when the state brings some cases, there can also be a civil case brought. And that's what we're seeing in the Alec Baldwin case. Because somebody had to load that gun with real bullets. Someone did that. Someone had the mindset that what we call the mens rea in criminal law. Someone intended to do harm, because otherwise they wouldn't have loaded that gun.
Wait, CK.
Bullets. Now,
you're saying someone intended to do harm.
Well, when you are on the set, and then we're gonna, then we should bring on Bill. But when you're on a set and you know that guns are going to be used, and you are responsible for loading those guns, why in the world would you have real bullets? First of all, number one, on the set. But Bill can address it. So you shouldn't have real bullets. There should not have been real bullets loaded in that gun, period. Because we're on the set and they're filming and they're going to use guns and they're going to simulate a shooting of some sort. So someone had to have intended harm to do that. Now, it's possible that it was an accident. It's possible, I don't know about that, but it's possible that someone grabbed inadvertently or store, as opposed to selling blanks, sold real bullets to someone. I mean, that's always possible. Things do happen, accidents happen. But in this case, someone had to have loaded that gun. Now, Alec Baldwin, as the owner, as the producer, as the director, that's his show. He, in my humble impression, is going to be open to civil liability. So again, we had a crime that was committed, or even if it was an accident, someone died. Unfortunately, it's tragic. That's why I said a tragedy beyond tragedy. Someone died. Someone was shot accidentally. I don't think it was intentional. I don't think Alec Baldwin intended to shoot and kill that person by his reaction right after it was captured on film. If ever there were any evidence, Santita, developed that would point to him, which I don't think there will be, but will point to he somehow intended for that to happen, then he would be charged criminally. But I don't see that. But in the meantime, the family, this is a wrongful death action, civil. That's one line. The family could bring potentially a wrongful death case against everyone involved, the producers, the film set, Alec Baldwin in his individual capacity, and all that, because for certain, if there's one thing, this is negligence. Because somebody didn't check to make sure that every single aspect of that needed to be done, everything needed to be done when you're using a firearm, the bells and whistles, the check marks. I'm sure that there's a protocol. Somebody missed something. And for that, someone's going to be held accountable. And it's typically the owner, the producer, the people who are in the line of accountability, but certainly at the top. So that's why Alec Baldwin more than likely will receive a wrongful death lawsuit. Civil. But the authorities are investigating to see if there are any criminal charges that can be levied against someone to hold someone accountable for the death, the tragic death. So that's the difference, Santita.
Well, you know what, CK, we're bringing on, this is live, of course, it's live on the Santita Jackson Show, Legal Q&A with CK. We do it every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. CK, we're bringing on our friend Bill Keys. He is so proud of him. He was headed to pro football. Okay, he said, well, no, don't want to do that. Then the Washington Post, he wrote for them. He said, Then he worked for Reverend Jackson. He's had quite the body of experiences, everyone. But then he left Reverend Jackson and worked for Spike Lee, and started out really as a production assistant, just as they call it, a lowly production assistant, and worked his way up, and he became one of two African Americans, 2 or 3, in fact, who had the purchasing power at a major Hollywood studio. Few have risen as high and have done as well. And he's an independent producer now, but he's also been an AD, an assistant director. And you have worked on films where they had guns. But explain this, because CK, you have to ask the questions, because I'm just trying to figure out how anything like this happened. I don't know how it could have happened.
And Santita, can we just add that Bill is an extraordinary person?
Yes, he is.
A person of compassion and just extraordinary. So, Bill, we're going to bring you on because this is directly in your wheelhouse. And I'm looking at the legal issues, the legal questions, but the fundamental question is, how could this have happened? There has to have been checks and balances.
Well, good morning, Santita. Thank you for having me. Good morning, CK. It's a pleasure to be here and also to learn from CK's expertise. There are 3 people on a film set that should prevent this from happening. There's the AD or assistant director, who is the equivalent of, if the director is the architect, then the AD is the foreman who runs the set or the construction site, to continue the analogy. The prop master is the second person who is responsible for all props, anything used, any physical elements or anything that anyone is holding or using on a film set, the actors in front of the camera. And the third person, when you have weapons in any scene, there's a weapons specialist, expert, or sometimes called an armorer. That is a person, possibly current or previous law enforcement, but an expert with serious licenses and weapons training. Those 3 people should always check everything and should be, and should be in between actors and an accident like this. So it's very hard to understand how something like this happens, but we're all aware of the few famous cases where it's happened in the past, which should only heighten discipline. One thing I'll add per CK's statement is that weapons have a variety of ways of discharging, whether it is, whether the weapon is plugged, meaning a projectile cannot be discharged, whether there's a blank in the gun, which can be discharged, which shouldn't harm a person, but can if someone's extremely close. And then what we all know, because we're aware of the few very famous cases, particularly Brandon Lee, son of Bruce Lee, sometimes in that chain of going from props to the actor, something does happen, someone misses something, and we all have to wait to find out what the technical reason is for what came out of the weapon and entered the body of the, in this case, the cinematographer on the set.
What?
And, you know,
Okay. No, please go on, CK.
I was just listening to Bill, and thank you so much for giving us those details, those 3 people. And that's where, from a legal point, those 3 people create the negligence. So when there's a protocol, and when Bill talked about those 3 people that should have been on point before the weapon was discharged, that's where the negligence arises potentially in a case. Because somebody, the assistant director, the prop master, the weapons specialist or expert, or you said armorer, they should have caught it. So the negligence, so if I were filing this lawsuit, if I were trying this case, I would probably have 400 acts of negligence, maybe not 400, but 100 certainly, that took place to lead, unfortunately, to this wrongful death. Because it's not just that those 3 people should have caught it, but the things that they should have done that evidently didn't happen. So it's not, you can have a police officer who's there, who's supposed to do 1, 2, 3 things. If that police officer is asleep at the switch and not doing those 1, 2 things, 3 things, those are 3 acts of negligence because the police officer is asleep at the wheel or asleep at the switch. So the negligence for a civil case, it's negligence. It's gross negligence, which in some jurisdictions can lead to what we call punitive damages. When we hear about these huge verdicts, 100 million, 200 million, 5 billion, usually there are punitive damages attached. We talked about the Johnson & Johnson case, Santita last week, where there are these huge verdicts and that are in the billions of dollars because punitive damages are designed to punish and deter the behavior. Punish and deter. And some states allow punitive damages, others do not allow punitive damages. But when there's such negligence, gross negligence, where it's just inexplicable, inexcusable, unacceptable, and someone dies, a lot of times people will ask for punitive damages. And the standard for that, of course, varies from state to state. This is a really serious case. And punitive damages will wipe someone out, for sure.
Well, then,
you get yeah.
No, because I want to ask you, would this make a difference? I mean, would this add to the case? Because, you know, a few weeks ago, IATSE, and Bill, you can help us with this. I mean, people behind the scenes were going to go on strike. It was going to shut the industry down. But at least, I think, 7 people walked off of the crew of this particular movie. And they were complaining about long hours. And in fact, there were 2 accidental weapons discharges before, excuse me, I misspoke. It wasn't Friday. It was before last Thursday's incident. CK, Bill, help me with that.
That does. Well, I will defer to Bill first, and then I'll give you the legal ramifications of that bit of information.
Bill.
I've been reading about the 3 points you just made, Santita, and if the stories we're hearing are true, and if this is what actually happened, there was clearly a lack of discipline. There are stereotypes that go with certain jobs and what the type of person is that can perform that job, and AD is generally a boss, quote unquote. It's the person who's in charge of hundreds of people and getting the director what he needs. And he or she, that assistant director, is generally very dominant, very forceful. And if they aren't disciplined, that's the beginning of a somewhat military breakdown in the chain of command. So we're hearing things about this AD. It's very sad. And the idea that Mr. Baldwin, even if he was practicing at the time, the idea that he was even pointing the gun during practice in the direction of anyone on the crew is problematic.
Why?
But again, I can understand it's problematic because it means the AD was not paying strict attention and taking the gun, a weapon on set, as seriously as he should. Presumably, when you're on set, you assume, oh, I know there's a prop master, the gun is plugged, it doesn't matter where Mr. Baldwin points it or pulls the trigger. I know that I and many people that I've been on set with, most people aren't around and aren't familiar with weapons. When one comes out, everyone is a little nervous. It does not matter if you've been told that the weapon is safe and secure. You do not even you do not relax in the slightest manner while a gun is on set, particularly in the hands of anyone except the prop master or the weapons specialist. When it moves to an actor's hands, you just even actors are supposed to take a certain amount of weapons training before they perform with the weapon. And I'm assuming or hoping that happens. But again, just the idea of, if what we read is true, pointing it and quote unquote practicing would be a problem for me. I would say go around the corner and do it, or I would have production assistants clear a path while Baldwin did that. So there absolutely was a letdown or a breakdown in protocols or safety practices.
In fact, the people who refused to work on this movie because they felt that that it was not going to be a safe environment. We're talking it's legal Q&A with CK as we talk about the Alec Baldwin case and worker safety, everybody. Worker safety. Bill Keys, independent film producer. We're talking with him. We're getting some information. What do you think? 773-763-9278. The Santita Jackson Show, legal Q&A with CK. Back in just a minute. This is a lot. I mean, the more you hear about this case, I mean, why do you think it's become such a big story?
Because it's Alec Baldwin, number one, because he was of Donald Trump, number two. And number three is Hollywood and someone died.
Yeah.
And number four, legally, now Bill should be retained by them as an expert because Bill has outlined for me as a plaintiff's lawyer 4 separate causes of action. Failure and negligent training, negligent hiring, negligent retention, 1, 2, 3, and just overall, and then gross negligence. Why do I say that? When it appears that there's sloppiness and a lack of discipline, as he said, on the set. People are concerned for their safety, hiring people who shouldn't be in a certain place and retaining them when you have reason to believe that there is a lack of discipline. That all, when I talked about the 100 acts of negligence, all of that adds up. And then you dissect what they should have done and what they didn't do. And those are the types of allegations potentially that you can make in a case. What is really astounding is that and maybe on sets, a lot of times people do complain about the conditions, the work conditions, because they're overworked. But in this instance, when you have guns that are being used, people are overworked. We are in a time, an unusual time in history because of COVID. So that is informing how people feel when they're working. It's very different from the pre-COVID era. And all of that, and I think there are also some union-type issues, if I'm not mistaken, or allegations that are going to be made as well.
Absolutely.
When walking up, all of that is going to impact the jury. If I'm putting this case together, all of that is going to be part of my case because it's all very relevant to on the set. When you have people this is clearly a unionized industry, you break ranks, you bring out people who are not part of the union. Presumably, those people may not have been trained. They've been in the same way. You don't know. You're taking a risk already. The decision-making that is being done, the judgment calls being done, putting profits over people, cutting costs, saving a bit of money because people who are unionized cost more. So part of a union, it's going to cost more. Just bring in some people, and everybody needs a job. I get it. But when someone dies, you look at all of these things. What decisions were made? Who was on the set? Who was in charge of this? Who was in charge of that? Was there security? Was there appropriate security? Was someone able to infiltrate the set for nefarious reasons? All of that has to be dissected, and all of that would probably come out discovery and then some. Because whenever you begin litigation, sometimes you think the case is about 1, 2, 3, like we're talking about now, and it could be about something completely different. That's worse or better.
Well, you know what, you let me know what questions you want to, thank you so much, Paul, what questions you want to ask Bill, because I am just perplexed. I think about Brandon Lee. I think about John Eric Hexum. Thank you so much for that, Paula, because he was so good looking, right? Okay. But he was young, we were all in that age group. And when he was playing around with a gun on set and accidentally shot himself in the head and died, that was devastating. That was in the 80s. Then Brandon Lee was in the 90s. I mean, how can something like this happen? And I guess I'm asking that question. It's a very plaintive question, but I think how can this happen? With all of these layers of protection, how did this happen? How? Stay right here, everybody.
The layers. Oh.
Are you on speaker, CK? Or are you on headset?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I'm on headset.
Okay. It just sounds like you're in a bit of a can, but it sounds good. Look, we got the volume, so it's good. Here.
Change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. It's legal Q&A with CK. We're talking about the Alec Baldwin case. We'll talk about Claudette Colvin tomorrow. And CK, I need to have you come back to talk about that, why this historic figure still has a record. But today we're taking apart this Alec Baldwin case. It's something that we're all hearing about, but I think it was so important. CK, immediate past president of the National Bar Association, brilliant lawyer, chair of Rainbow Push, and Bill Keys, independent film producer. Indeed, no one is more qualified to talk about this. He has actually been an assistant director on a set where they had guns. So, what continues to just percolate in my mind, CK, is how this could happen with these layers of protection. But I'm going to leave that to you and Bill.
Well, when Bill was talking, and I said when we were on break that I felt that he should be an expert pertaining to this case for the plaintiff, assuming that the family will file a lawsuit, a wrongful death suit, which I'm pretty sure they will. And the reason why I said that is just in his description. And again, we don't have the inside track as to all of the details. But just in what he was saying about the lack of discipline on the set, I will paraphrase that and say sloppiness. As a plaintiff's lawyer, I would say that's sloppiness, lack of discipline. The fact that there were people on the set, perhaps, that were, because it was a union issue, there were people that were released, let go, and other people that were unionized, and other people that were hired allegedly were not part of a union. What was their training? So, negligent training, negligent hiring, negligent retention. When you all hear negligence, that's civil. That's when you have wrongful death cases or personal injury cases, negligence is the key. Negligence has 4 elements. You've got a duty. Well, let's talk about the duty on the set. The duty to make sure that the people who are there on the set are safe. There's a duty. They had a duty to take care of those firearms according to the protocol, to implement a protocol. There was a breach. Somehow, somewhere, that's the second element of negligence. Somehow, somewhere, someone didn't do that, and there was a breach of that protocol. And that breach, the third element, is causation. Cause, and the fourth element is damages. The damages, the death, the unfortunate death. And so, those are without a question for me, just based on purely what I've seen in the media, that's the caveat, and what Bill and I are talking about, those are the elements of negligence in this case for a wrongful death case. There's so probably more layers. So when Bill talks about the weapon being plugged, Bill, can you tell us a little bit more about how do you plug a weapon? Is there a mechanism? And under what circumstances will they plug a weapon versus having a blank?
Well, there can be a material, whatever hardened material. I'm not sure what it's made of, but it can be in the barrel of the gun to make sure that no projectile can exit the weapon. What producers also strive for is visual realism in their productions. So they often use real weapons as opposed to a prop gun. They may have a real gun that is plugged, and then there are times when they have a real gun that isn't plugged and they use blanks. And then the definition of what a blank is it a sound that goes off so the gun looks good and flashes when it shoots, or is there an actual projectile in the gun, whether that's a blank that doesn't have gunpowder in it, or whether it's, I don't know how or why it could be, or whether it's what we all refer to as a bullet, some projectile exited the gun on the rough set and killed the cinematographer. So what that projectile was and how it was prepared, I can't imagine. It's very sad. And I'll also point out something that CK spoke to at the top, which is Mr. Baldwin is not only an actor, he's a producer. So he's at the front of the line of responsibility. And I'm sure that adds to the sensationalism of the case.
What do you mean? He's at the front of the line. Is that legally? I mean, does that pertain to lawsuits? Should he have known better?
Legally, as a producer, he's responsible for the production. Sometimes a producer credit is just something handed to a producer, particularly if there's someone, an actor of note like Mr. Baldwin, and they don't necessarily have fiscal or administrative responsibilities. But regardless, I'm not sure if that would make a difference to someone like C.K. Hoffler. The point is he is credited as a producer, which means he is, along with his fellow producers, in charge of this production. He is one of the heads of the production responsible for the final product.
Let's go and call us at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. CK, before we go to Pam, what are you hearing now?
Well, with Alec Baldwin, no matter what, he's going to be sued. He'll be named, I believe, in his individual capacity because of all the titles and because of all the hats that he wore. And also because he was theoretically the shooter. I mean, he shot the person. So inadvertently, accidentally, but he was the shooter. But because of his title and his responsibilities on the set and the role on that movie, he would be named in his individual capacity. The buck stops with him, in my impression, along with a bunch of other people. I think that any negligence, if he made the determination to bring on people who were probably not trained or to not provide sufficient security for those on the set, that is also liability that would be directly pointed at him. This is also what we call a premises liability case. It's also a workers' comp case. What do I mean by that? Premises liability is when there's a crime that happens on the premises in an apartment building or that potentially this could be where there's negligence that we discussed. A premises liability case. It happened in an environment, a business environment, if you will, was a set. Also, workers' comp. Why workers' comp? Because this happened in the course of someone's job. Someone was performing, a cinematographer was performing a job, a responsibility, a duty. When you're in your office, if you get injured on the job, this is an on-the-job injury. But there's always, typically, insurance for all of this. So if there's claims to be resolved or litigation, insurance will cover it. But when someone is named in their individual capacity, and if there's individual liability or negligence attached to that person, there can also be individual responsibility with judgment if you have a judgment against you individually. But a lot of times, producers and the like, they have insurance for that. They have umbrella policies, all kinds of insurance to cover that. But it's the humiliation. But punitive damages, as I said before, that's a lot. And I think, the amount of insurance in this case, what is the value of a life? What is the value of a life? And that's what we look at legally when we bring these cases.
Pam from the West Side, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Santita. How are you? Good morning to the guests.
Great hearing your voice always.
Thank you. Appreciate this, the insight. So I looked into some of the, I've listened to some of the experts talking about guns. And Santita, so this really speaks to just a workers' right issue and safety being the primary issue, not only on the set, but in any company or organization or structure. And so I suspect that there were other workers who knew that this wasn't the safest working environment. And I think there was a prop master who said that they refused to work on that issue.
Yeah.
Excuse me, work on that set. So my question for the panel, and particularly the expert with the weapons, I heard the weapons expert.
He's the film producer, Pam. So
film producer.
That's
okay,
right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So just speaking to the safety concerns, and also I heard a weapons expert say you don't assume that a gun is loaded. There is certain etiquette when you're in the presence of weapons. He said you say that the weapon is loaded, and you act accordingly. You don't assume it. You say that it's loaded. When you see a gun, it's loaded, and then you do all the necessary precautions to check it. And this is just heartbreaking, Santita. But as I said, this speaks to just workers' rights and the environment of workers. And I know many are put in unsafe conditions and won't say anything, Santita, because they need the money. They have to work, they have to feed their families. And I'm not a big fan of Alec Baldwin and his temperament.
Mm-hmm. So does that make you suspicious of him?
Yes, I think there is neglect. I think the very first thing you should do, I don't care if you're a CEO, if you're an executive of a nonprofit organization, if you're employing people, you've got to have safety as the primary concern. Because if you don't, accidents will occur. And here we are looking at a fatality. And this is not the first. They talked about Brandon Lee and then others. So is Hollywood going to even learn from that? And it seems like there is really, there's no other safety, standard in the industry.
Bill, let's stay right there, Pam.
This is awful.
Bill, why don't you respond to what you're hearing from Pam?
Pam makes an excellent, simple point that I alluded to earlier, but to be specific and just repetitive, always behave as if it's a real gun and as if it's loaded with real ammunition. which is the way I've always behaved on sets that I've been on, and most of my colleagues do. I don't care if it's supposed to be a prop gun. It's supposed to have blanks. It's supposed to be plastic or not real. When a gun comes out on a set, behave as if it is deadly. Therefore, you avoid incidents like this. That was an excellent point that she made and well worded. And most people do that, or that's what I'm familiar with on film sets.
Unbelievable, everybody. Eddie from Dallas. Eddie, what's on your mind?
Yes. Good morning. Thank you. I have a question, I have a statement and question for your panelists. Basically, I've been in the military for over 20 years. I've run the office, and I've also had armory experience. What happens is you're supposed to have someone that stays there with all the weapons. And the person stated in the news that evidently something happened. He stepped away, and the person that handed Alex Baldwin the weapon basically just gave it to him, said it was cold, which means it was all clear. That's similar technology that we use in the military. The difference is we normally have a three-pronged approach. The first person that gives a weapon, we check it, we eyeball it. The second person eyeballs it. The last person eyeballs it before it gives it away, or it's a prop. We treat each weapon as a real weapon, not a fake. There are fire suppressors. It can be red, which goes on the outside. It can be something on the inside, as your panelist just stated. There's a host of things that could have prevented this. Secondly, Alex Baldwin, normally that's his production company, so it would be an LLC or maybe a C company. There are different issues. I mean, I actually sent you a LinkedIn request so that you would be able to look at my profile to be able to know who I am and what I'm connected to, Santita. That is something that there will be an investigation. They've already talked to the guy that handed him the weapon. He's been fired off of multiple sets for doing improper procedures. Mm-hmm. So I will let you go and I'll follow your questions.
Thank you for that. I mean, but Bill, he makes the point. This gentleman had been fired. He was not the armorer, who's very young. This was her second major film. But was it the prop master? Who was just above her?
Prop master.
Okay.
And prop master. I've read the.
Yes, please explain.
Oh, I've read the same thing that the caller just stated, and if those are facts and they're true, sometimes the prop master should be the last person to hand the gun to the actor. So the prop master and the weapon specialist check everything. The prop master generally will hand the weapon to the actor. That has been my experience. And again, how this ends up happening, we'll all find out as this unfolds, but it certainly shouldn't. And again, the last two callers, the information they've shared is very, very helpful and clarifying.
But you all were going to go on strike. I mean, all of the IATSE. Please explain what the strike was going to be about and who was going to go on strike a couple of weeks ago. It was just resolved, ironically, like a week or so ago.
IATSE covers a number of departments and jobs, but it's a very proud community and overworked community, people who work on film sets, and there's always a struggle between financiers and studios who are responsible for the distribution of the final product and artisans who work every day, very long hours, shortened weekends to deliver quality storytelling. So finally, and what happened in the last few weeks, there was a slight move forward in terms of unions regaining or clawing back some of their rights. But overall, I can certainly tell you that people are underpaid and overworked. And with the explosion of distribution and streaming and all types of things, they did just make some gains. And unfortunately, this incident is a prime example of what's going on film sets with respect to the quality and experience of the people on film sets and all of the stories that are coming out about crew leaving or protesting even the day of this incident, people being replaced, and also people with questionable backgrounds and work history, leading departments on the set. And the last place you can afford mistakes is in the prop department and with an armorer.
Do you think this armorer, explain what an armorer is? And this, the armorer on this movie, this was her second major film. She's only 24. And many people said, well, she's very young for this, but she's a child of the industry. Her father apparently is very well regarded in the industry. Can you speak to that, Bill?
An armorer is a weapons expert, and you have presumably a lot of experience and history with weapons. The gentleman, the last caller, spoke to that and sounded like he has that background, particularly if he has a military or a law enforcement background. A 24-year-old armorer could not have nearly as much experience. Also, what you just stated, Santita, which I wasn't aware of, speaks to another aspect of the industry, nepotism, family. Everyone has to get their first job someplace. There's a chicken egg question with respect to moving up on film sets and in the film industry in general, which is you have to have experience to get a job. You have to have a job to get experience. Everyone gets a break someplace, and you generally get it because someone you know brings you in. You have a relative, you have an uncle, you are the neighbor of a famous person. I wasn't aware of those details, but if that is the case in this example, that makes this incident even sadder. If the armorer was a 24-year-old child of an experienced film industry professional, and this was a early or very new job for that person, I'm very sad to hear that.
Is she in this chain of culpability?
I think she is.
Just below the producers.
Wow.
She's the person most responsible for the weapon.
And Santita, think about this. One of the things you look at legally is, was this reasonably foreseeable? Of course it's reasonably foreseeable. If you put a 24-year-old who has no experience, and I'm all for, we all were there. I'm all for getting experience, but you have to be supervised under someone's wing for years when it comes to this. So it's going to be the question of, was it reasonably foreseeable that this could happen? The answer is going to be yes, and that's always a query in a negligence case. In addition to that, the nepotism. See, this is the other thing. It goes back to judgment. And the bottom line, the buck stops with Alec Baldwin. And someone talked about his temperament. That's going to play against him in this case because he's known sort of as a hothead, just that's how people perceive him, yelling at people and all that kind of stuff. People don't like that. They don't like that. Jurors don't like that because now he has to be concerned about a jury of his peers. They're not, and when you come into a courtroom as a defendant, and all of a sudden you're nice and contrite because he's going to testify. I said, okay, he's got to testify. He should testify because he's going to be the defendant. If he doesn't, the jury's going to look at him all really wondering. In a criminal case, you don't have to testify but in a civil case, he's going to have to give a deposition in the case. And so that's testimony under oath. And if they see other instances of him being a hothead, yelling at people, that's relevant. It's got to be relevant. And then all of a sudden he's nice as can be and all that. People may not believe that. So his temperament is going to play into this case as well. And I can tell you, people don't like bullies. They don't like people who are nasty. They don't like people who are mean. They don't like people who avoid, who take shortcuts because of not wanting to pay because they feel they're putting profits in front of people, and especially on something this important that involves guns. in arms. It was his choice to do a movie where they were going to be shooting. His choice to hire the people that he hired. His choice to give this 24-year-old her second experience, and his choice to take the position that he took relative to unions. His choice. So it's going to be on him. He's going to be put under a microscope for his choices in this wrongful death case, if it comes to that.
Bill, I've got a couple of
And
minutes.
Santita,
Yes, please.
Santita, it would be very difficult for a 24-year-old to instruct or direct Alec Baldwin at that moment on a set. Alec Baldwin, it's a matter of public record, as C.K. Hoffler states, his personality also on this set. Not only is he a actor of note, he is also a producer, meaning the armorer's direct boss. If he chooses to, I'm going to presume he says, is the weapon, I'm going to presume he asked if the weapon is safe. If the armorer says, yes, it is, then if he wants to pick it up in practice, as is being reported, the armorer would have little ability to tell someone of Alec Baldwin's stature, don't do that, or please step to the side, please don't point it in that direction, if Alec Baldwin wanted to behave differently.
Wow. CK, we have about 90 seconds before we go. What's our takeaway from this legal Q&A with CK?
Well, Santita, first I want to say thank you so much to Bill Keys. Amazing, phenomenal. And I had to point out just what a great person he is. And I just saw his strong qualifications. But, Santita, the takeaway is workplace safety issues are real. Whether it's COVID safety or this type of safety on the set. And we have to really focus on the workers. How are they working? What are the conditions? What are they facing? What are their rights? And that's what this litigation is going to be about. So I just think as a society, as a community, be concerned about the conditions that people are working under. If you are an employer, be careful about this, especially now during COVID. You should always be concerned, but have heightened compassion and heightened security and a heightened sense of the need to protect your workers. That's the takeaway. Because if you don't, all it's going to take is a really halfway decent or strong trial lawyer who does negligence, and they will nail you, because this is what could happen in certain instances. It's reasonably foreseeable.
And everybody, don't play with guns. Don't play with them. Don't play. Guns, well, they're instruments that can kill people. So please be careful. And let us really begin to examine workplace safety. Workers deserve to go to work and to live to see another day. So our prayers go out to Miss Hutchins and her family. God rest her soul. To the director, may he have a speedy recovery. And quite frankly, to Alec Baldwin and his family and the whole Rust family, who were working on that film, because they will be forever changed by this. And certainly our prayers go with them. But let us really look at worker safety. Remember, these workers were going to go on strike. And worker safety was one of the issues that was going to have them shut down Hollywood. Maybe they'll learn. John Eric Hexum, as he rests in power and peace, and Brandon Lee. All of these people who lost their lives on sets. Didn't have to happen, everybody. I love you. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. May God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, Paul. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. CPT, WCPT, and AM 950 Radio. I'm Santita Jackson. See you tomorrow. God willing. God bless. CK, this is a lot. I mean, just the more you read about it, you're like, oh, this is a horrible, horrible, horrible case. It's horrible. It's horrible.
And it's going to probably get worse. My prediction, they'll shut it down. There'll be a wrongful death suit filed, possibly, or they might have pre-suit settlement.
But very quickly.
I settled pre-suit.
Well, no, very quickly. I mean, because you brought up his personality. And so did Bill. That that is an issue now. Just how intimidated the workers might have felt by him, I can't go to him, I can't direct him. So you think that's an issue too? That really is an issue?
That's going to be a factor. That's going to be a factor. Whether it's spoken or not, it will be a factor, absolutely. Because he probably, I do like Alec Baldwin. I like him. I don't know him, but I like him as an actor. I respect him. The whole Baldwin family, all of them. It's a family of actors. So Hollywood fans. So I like them. I like their contributions and all the rest. But he's not the only director that might have temperament issues. But when it comes to litigation, all of these things play a role. Now, if his temperament meant that he was an A-type personality, he crossed every T and dotted every I, that helps him. But in this case, it seems like there was a lack of crossing every T and dotting every I because of the dynamic. So some people who are A-type people on a set like that, the temperament being tough, being no nonsense, holding everybody's feet to the fire, making sure that they're accountable, that would be beneficial. But I think in this instance, it's the exact opposite. There was a lot of loosey-goosiness, lack of discipline, as Bill said, on the set that was pretty evident, at least from the evidence that we know right now, and that's why the temperament will come into play.
Bill, do you have any closing?
24-year-olds.
Oh my gosh!
Why was he putting in? That's again. I went back to remember I said all that negligent hiring, negligent retention. Hiring someone who's 24 years old to take this on this important of an issue. Retaining someone who's 24 years old and all the other people that he hired and retained that maybe were not up to snuff. I'm all in favor of giving someone experience, but when you've got guns on the set, and by the way, why would there have been a loaded gun ever on the set? That's going to be my fundamental question.
Bill?
I do know that there was security there, but why was there a loaded gun? Why was there real bullets on the set?
Bill?
Why?
Why? Before I go?
I'm still waiting. I'm going to wait to hear or find out that it was a loaded gun, as we understand what that means, that it had bullets in it, and it was a normal, real bullet that was fired. I don't know how that could be or why that would be. I'm waiting to have that confirmed. I didn't know the information about the 24-year-old. If she has only worked one or two even three
she's
or four.
done 2 major movies, according to news reports.
Yeah, that's just problematic because it's a Western, and I'm assuming every day there could be there are going to be a lot of, if it's a 30 or 90 or 3 month 90-day shoot. There are going to be a lot of days with multiple weapons being used. Maybe she should be a second to a very experienced department head, as opposed to being the department head in charge. That is really problematic. And if she is second generation industry professional, then you have a sense of how and why she got the job. People are going to look into who her father or mother is, what jobs they've worked on, what their connection is to the producers. Someone like C.K. Hopler is going to connect those dots. And, I think more is going to come as more facts are going to come out.
Bill,
that are not going to be very helpful.
Bill, yes. It gets even more interesting. I listen to NPR a lot. She just had an interview on NPR a couple of weeks ago. I knew I'd heard her name before.
You mean the armorer?
Yes.
Really?
She was just on. I'll send you the link. She was just on NPR. They interviewed her. Yes. Because she's so young. She's a woman. She's 24. She's a woman, and she's getting these big jobs. And she's well regarded. People who said, people who've seen her said, she, they, might have said, what is she doing here? But after she worked on a couple of films, they were like, no, she's good. Yeah.
Well, Santita, let me just say that. I recall as a baby lawyer, I spiked early. I was always the youngest doing everything. I always felt I was working harder than everyone else, but that's just my perspective. But I also spiked early. People gave me a lot of opportunity and experience early on, but I was always training under masters. a master, when I say masters, master men and women, people who were masters in the practice of law, whether it was a Bob Washington, whether it was a Willie Gary, masters, people who were well recognized, knew the craft. I trained under them, and then I was able to fly.
Yeah.
But at 24, I just got out of law school. What am I flying? Don't know nothing. Ain't learned nothing. All I know, and I probably did work on some great cases, but you're not. And I probably did outdistance, and probably people felt, oh, she's ready, but you're not ready with 2 or 3 cases for prime time, because there's something that's valuable about experience. There's something valuable about putting in your time, building those wings, getting your wings, earning your wings, and then flying. So I don't know what it's like, and Bill, I've heard you in Hollywood and on the set, but just as a concept, and I think that'll resonate with the jury. It was too soon. And when you add to that the labor issues, the people quitting because of feeling unsafe, all of that adds up to bad and more bad.
Well, you know what? Everybody continue to follow the story. I need to run to a Zoom call. But CK, I'm going to call you because I need you tomorrow if you have time. Bill, I love you. I love you, CK. Thank you, everybody. I'm running, but
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you so much. And I love Q&A with CK. I learned so much. Thank you, CK.
Thank you, Bill. It's great to hear you. It's great to hear your voice. I'm so happy you were a part of it.
Thank you. Love you, everybody. God bless.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.